and welcome to the Hybrid School Builders Podcast. I am your host, Rebecca Foley, and I am so glad you are joining me today. I am a fellow grassroots founder who is hoping to make your journey toward founding a sustainable hybrid school a little bit easier. If you are dreaming of starting a hybrid school, or perhaps you've already gotten started, you are in the right place. Join me as we dive into real stories, practical tips, and hard-won lessons that I have learned to help you launch and grow your program with confidence. Remember, building a hybrid school is not just about creating a business or creating jobs. It's not even about just serving the children who attend the program. It's literally about reshaping the landscape of education, and we can do that one community, one entrepreneur, and one program at a time. Hey guys, today I wanted to kind of pause for a minute. If you have been listening in order and you've kind of followed the progression through the planning phase up into building the infrastructure, which is where we're at right now, if you are following along in order, I wanted to just kind of pause and mention some of the smaller things that often either fall through the cracks or you run into them and you're like, oh, I didn't know this was going to be so time consuming, or I wonder if I should hire this out, or I just didn't think of this. Okay. Grab a pencil and paper and just kind of jot this down. Some of it you don't have to worry about right now, but other things I just want you to have on your radar so that when you get to it, you think, oh, right, I knew this was coming, and it doesn't take you by surprise. Okay, so if we back up to the planning phase, when you're first making sure that your market can support all of this, you're writing out your vision and mission statement, you're deciding on your business structure, you're in that early phase of making sure this is all feasible. A couple of the things that can end up being a bit of a hassle for you, but you kind of need them, is kind of in the website marketing part. Okay, so one is actually building a website. Now, you can build a website on Squarespace. I like Squarespace because if I can use it, anybody can use it. I am not tech savvy, and I am just old enough that I was a teenager before Windows 95 came out. So I did not grow up, dealing with computers as a young child. So if I can use Squarespace, anybody can. And I like Squarespace for that reason. But if you want to use whether Squarespace or something, there's also Wix and WordPress and some other ones like that. You kind of need a website. If you want to use any of those, you can also get help in all of this. When I talk about hiring out, of course, this depends on your budget. I did not hire out any of this stuff. You can go to Upwork or Fiverr. I've had a little bit of experience with Upwork and had some help there. And you can go find someone and just say, can you help me just create a homepage? You tell them what you're doing, what you need to communicate. And if you really just don't want to deal with it, you can find someone for a couple $100s to just create one page for you. Okay. And marketing is the other thing. Now, again, we did not do a lot of marketing besides we printed up some brochures. We just created them ourselves on, I can't remember the website right now. You can use Canva. That's very common. It wasn't Canva. It was one that actually printed them all out. But you might want brochures or business cards or social media posts, something you can share easily that looks pretty, right? So if you want that kind of thing and you don't want to do it yourself, that's something else you can go to Upwork and Fiverr. If you have the budget and you're willing to spend a little bit, and for not too much, you can have someone else do that for you. Okay, a logo is another thing. Okay, so your website, a few marketing materials, and a logo. Again, we did all of this ourselves. You absolutely can, and it really doesn't cost, that much if you do the work yourself. But you can also hire that out if you have the money and find someone to just help you build. And I'm talking really basic stuff. Okay. Now, as you move into infrastructure, there's some of the pieces that I've talked about, but I just want to make sure that doesn't fall through the cracks, is money management. Especially if you're a nonprofit, you need to make sure that your money is coming through and being recorded. And in any case, but especially if you're a nonprofit, you need to make sure any kind of fundraising or donations get labeled correctly. differently than like tuitions and fees. So talking to an accountant and making sure you have a bookkeeper or giving yourself a rudimentary training in it so that every transaction gets labeled right away. Because honestly, when you're the one doing the transactions, you're the one purchasing and, all of the things that have to happen and paying any bills and whatever, what every transaction is. So if you know how to like just categorize it real quick, it saves a lot of time because you don't have to then communicate it to somebody who doesn't know what it is. So sometimes it can be helpful to just talk to someone so you know what kind of categories to use, and then you just do it yourself. As you get into admissions and student information, which I haven't talked about yet in the podcast, I will soon, but some things that you just want on your radar is not just the essential information about students, like their name and their birthday and, their parents' names and their address and email address and all of that. You also need to make sure you have emergency contacts. You need to ask about custody issues just for the safety of the child, to make sure that if there are any custody issues, you know about it, so someone doesn't show up and pick up the kid who's not supposed to have them. I highly advise thinking through what your special needs policy is and having a question on there about special needs. Are there any special needs that your child has? And this could be anything from food allergies to learning needs or anything like that. And then if there's an indication that there are special needs, that you have a follow-up form that you send out and that you meet one-on-one with the family and just make sure that you can serve them well. And also have some sort of special needs policy, but visible on your website so that it's already stated before you meet with a family that you do have a policy. If you're a program that doesn't specifically serve special needs, which I know a lot of programs do, but if you're just serving neurotypical children and you don't have a lot of extra support for students with special needs, but you want to be friendly and accommodating if you possibly can, you can say that you welcome all students, but then you want to make sure that you say, we do not have the staff to accommodate one-on-one or something like that along those lines. And we do need a teacher to be able to serve the entire class well. And that kind of became kind of the guiding idea, was we really want to welcome every child that we possibly can. But if a student is pulling a lot of resources from the teacher and she can't deliver to the rest of the class because of the extra care that the child needs, then that's probably something that we can't do. But we're happy to talk to people about bringing in their own support person or whatever. Okay? But make sure you talk to them one-on-one. All right? Also, open communication with parents. Proactive communication. Proactive communication in every single area with everybody that you have to talk to, whether it's your host building, with parents, with staff. Proactive communication. Having meetings before, not to waste everybody's time, but just having things on the calendar where you just have a check-in with parents, with staff, whatever. That's a policy that you want to make sure that you have. It's not really a policy, it's a culture. It's a culture that you want to have so that there's communication happening before things become a big deal. So that if there's any issues with a child, you've already been having conversations and lots of opportunities to have conversations, okay? Logistical things like secretarial tasks, organizing admissions data, setting up forms, maintaining records, setting up the printer, okay? A lot of things like that are substantial time investments. Like, you don't really want to spend as much time probably as you are going to have to spend. So again, if you have the budget, and I definitely recommend hiring this out just maybe on an hourly basis, maybe to a parent who's interested in making a few dollars, because it can be seasonally really busy, but it's just very time consuming. So that's something that, like, keeping all of that together, making sure it's delivered to the right people, making sure it's organized, student data, signups, that kind of thing, emergency records, making sure it's all delivered to the teacher, that there's a binder with all of it for safety. It can fall through the cracks if you don't have it, in your awareness, but it's important. Now, along those lines, safety and emergency procedures, at some point before your opening day, hopefully during your teacher trainings and all of that, you work out and then put in your handbook, like emergency drills, where your fire exits are, drop off and pick up routines. Do parents come in the building? Do they pick up at the door? Are there issues with the parking lot and safety? Are doors locking? What do you do if someone knocks on the door? Okay, all of that kind of thing you want to think about as you're, looking at a facility, as you're working through it. And now, I am not a huge fan of getting like really worried about every possible thing that could possibly happen, although it probably does serve you well to think it through so that if someone asks, you have thought it through and you're not just like, oh, I never thought of that before. Think about all sorts of things beforehand if you possibly can. And people have asked about concealed carry policies. They've asked about all kinds of things that the very first year I was like, I didn't even think of that. So some stuff like that you might want to think about. Now, again, it's okay to say, I don't really have an answer for that yet. We're still working on our policy for that. What are your thoughts? You can say stuff like that if you're really early in your, developing that, but people will ask about safety and emergency stuff. Okay. And just a couple other things later on, substitutes is something that you really want to try to have as much as you can. Okay. People are going to get sick. Staff are going to get sick. They're going to go on trips. They're going to have to go to funerals and weddings and all that kind of thing. And, you don't want to be closing your doors all the time because you don't have teachers. If you're really in dire straits, that's fine to do that. Like the whole, a third of the school is out with the flu or something and you just can't find substitutes. But in general, you do want to have a substitute list ready to go for staff absences. You can usually find a couple parents who are able to substitute. You're going to be paying them just like you pay your teachers, not as much probably, but like have a rate, like we pay our substitutes $100 a day or something like that. And then you keep a list of them before you need them so that you can call upon those people. And you've got several of them to call upon and they're ready to jump in. Okay. And the teacher should have some backup lesson plans also so that if it's a last minute absence, there's something that's there at the classroom that they can just kind of make the day go with some backup plans that day or maybe 2 days. It's good to have a 2-day because a lot of people are sick for 2 days in a row and they might be out for 2 days in a row, a whole week or whatever. So have some backup lesson plans for that. Okay. And also that can really add up as far as pay as we got to be, 10, 12 plus teachers and we were giving them a couple of sick days that they had paid. So they were still collecting their salary if they were within those paid time off. But then we also had to pay subs. And I ended up just putting a line item in my budget for subs, assuming that every teacher was going to use all their sick days and was going to have to pay somebody to replace them, which I don't think that ever happened for all of them, but I put it in the budget like it would. Okay, because it added up to quite a bit of money. Okay. The other one last thing is things like technology, logistics, and printers. Now, our school was very low tech. I don't think we even had internet our first 2 years, and it was fine. And we're very low tech. But eventually we still needed a printer and we did have some internet and teachers wanted to print things and send it to the printer. And only one person knew how to use the printer and knew how to get it hooked up to the internet and get the teachers' computers to talk to the printer. And nobody our size has an IT person who's ready to just show up and help with that. So one, it can be a little expensive to keep a printer and ink and paper on site, but it might be something that you end up doing. So make sure that's in your budget. And two, have a person, it might be a teacher, but they're going to be teaching all day. But this is a good thing for an administrative helper. It might be you, it might be another person who's on campus or an aide who kind of goes through a basic training so that someone can say, hey, which button am I supposed to push? I don't know how to get the toner in. Just some basic stuff that they kind of go through a training with the printer to help figure out how to use that. And the same with any kind of building logistics. And a lot of times this might be the same person and it's just part of their job, that they know where the broom is, they know where the mop is, they know where the backup tables go, they know who to call if the toilet overflows. So they're just a logistic person where everybody knows who to ask, at least if they have any issues with that. Okay. So those are just some little things that can fall through on top of all of the things that I talked about earlier about like making sure you're paying yourself and make sure that you have a budget for paying someone to help clean so that you're not burning the staff out. And, there's other things to talk about in other episodes, but I just want to mention some of those things that you want to have in your radar as you go forward to make sure that you are thinking of them. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks so much for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure you check out the resources I am developing at startahybridSchool.com. Send me an email anytime. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.